Welcome back to BWO Daily, your source for news in sports entertainment and the world of professional wrestling from you boys at Busted Wide Open. My name is Nick Howell.
And I am Sir Ian Dangerous. And Nick, it's a tough one today. There has been some very disturbing stuff coming out from Twitter in the news about independent wrestler David Starr, real name Max Barsky, who is probably one of the most recognizable names on the independent scene right now. Multiple title holder. Well, he was, that it is until this all went down. You see, apparently yesterday, a tweet was posted by a user named Tori, which is short for Victoria, accusing David Starr of sexual assault, rape, gaslighting, and just basically being a bad boyfriend overall. It's kind of hard to make sense of all this because there's a lot happened in a very short period of time. But basically, it seemed like everything started with a discussion about comedian Chris D'Elia, who was outed as being a sexual predator yesterday as well. And then it spun into talk about David Starr. He ended up responding to it, and the two of them had a conversation on Twitter about their prior relationship and an incident that took place in a hotel where the sex was coerced and not consensual. So this is all out there right now. You can actually go to postwrestling.com, has a pretty good rundown of everything that they said to each other. But also another ex of Starr's named Bella came forward with similar stories, including non-consensual sex, including rape. David Starr released a massive statement, nominally an apology, shortly after this, and then continued to add more to that afterwards, which from all reports and from everything that I saw, it was an apology, but it also didn't seem to help the situation very much, and a lot of people jumped on him for it afterwards. He said, quote, "I've done plenty of wrong in my life, especially regarding my relationships with my partners. I am not a predator, but I have been an emotionally immature dickhead to my partners." And then he's got this long-form apology essay. He also named several of his other previous partners in the essay that had not been involved in this conversation, thereby supposedly outing them as being also potential victims of him being as he says, a quote, bad partner. The remembrance of the event in the hotel was of particular interest to people, especially seeing as he used the term, quote, gray rape. Which, yeah, I have never heard of, Nick.
Me either.
I don't know if that's a legal term. Somehow I think rape is rape, but I don't know.
Thank you.
Maybe that's a legal term. But
there's either consent or there's not.
Yes. So she was stating that there was a verbalized no and an I don't want to do that. She says, quote, "Why else would you tell me I liked it and gave me the silent treatment all day? You're remembering it wrong for the internet." And he says there was not a no. So two different stories here. Again, it's just the weight of accusations against David Starr became overwhelming, and his own apologies or statements about it did not help his situation in the court of public opinion. In addition, previous texts from him were found where he referenced Aziz Ansari and the incident that happened with him and the possibly non-consensual sex that was involved there. And Starr is saying that incident would help his own case, would be helpful in his particular situation. He also stated that he had written the apology a week ago, which on this timeline seems strange. As of this morning, Nick, we found out that Starr has now been stripped of the Over the Top Championship, which is an Irish wrestling promotion. Also, British promotion TNT Extreme has stripped him of their championship, and Rev Pro has stripped him of the Southside belt that was his as well. So they've all released statements. TNT in particular stated that we refuse to work with predators, a term that Starr has said multiple times over the last 24 hours that he is not. He has stated several times, "I am not a predator. But Riptide Wrestling has stated that Starr and Martin Bentley, who is a British wrestling fan, he's a pseudo journalist, and he apparently has been engaging in forums that objectify and degrade female wrestling fans and posting private images from a woman's OnlyFans account. They've both been banned from Riptide. We the Independent, which is a artist labor empowerment movement that was fighting to unionize wrestling, they have disassociated themselves with David Starr. Of course, Starr was famous for one thing as well, also being one of the biggest proponents and most vocal proponents for unionizing wrestling. And I got to take a second, Nick, to say that I hope that this doesn't throw a wrench into unionizing wrestling. That's something that needs to be looked at very hard. And as someone who was very vocal about it and was actually kind of a socially aware, justice-minded guy, at least that's what he was apparently playing. I hope Starr, as the poster child for unionization of wrestling, doesn't hurt that movement.
Yeah.
But apparently, we the Independent have started moving on their own. As of this morning, as of actually very recently this morning, in the middle of me researching this story, Nick, David Starr deleted his Twitter, which is wildly ironic for a guy whose intro gimmick includes nicknames, which include he's really good at Twitter. It should also be noted, and his last tweet on the account, actually, before I get to that, his last tweet was, "I'm not a sex predator, and there's no evidence to say that I am. I've just been a very bad partner to a lot of women. Thank you to everyone who's reached out positively. I am far from perfect, but I'm not a rapist, period." That was his last tweet. It should be noted, Nick, that Starr does have a history of unpopularity with independent wrestlers. People have been vocal about it before. I recall seeing a tweet from Pete Dunne a year ago where he said, "F David Starr." Actually, Ryan Nemeth, who's been on our show, also has openly been pretty clear without naming names that David Starr is on his shit list. So the big story here, Nick, though, is that it's not just David Starr anymore. Now this morning, we're finding a number of other British wrestling personalities are being outed as being sexual predators. In fact, right now, a number of women involved in the British scene are actually compiling a list of wrestlers and people involved in the wrestling scene that are known sexual predators or who have done things that make women feel uncomfortable.
Right.
And that list, as of me checking it just now, was at 40 the last time I saw. And there are now calls for that list to be expanded to North America and Europe.
Wait, that's just the UK?
That's just the UK. That shows how pervasive this has been. Names so far that have been out, David Starr's prestige teammate, El Ligero, has had multiple accusations. Mikey Whiplash, not to be confused with Mikey Whipwreck, but Mikey Whiplash, who is a promoter of Fierce Females, has had a number of statements made about him, including from Piper Niven from Viper, Alex Ponal, Pyro, Stephen Hughes, James Finn, Mark Perry, number of names that are currently being circulated as being known sexual predators. So it is, this story is still developing and it is getting more uncomfortable by the minute. And it's looking like this may actually blow up in the next 24 hours. So wanted to get this on the ground floor.
I'm usually not at a loss for words. It's very hard for me to be not have an opinion. But I am absolutely stunned. I think the thing that has caught me off guard the most that you've said is there's a list of 40 that are just in the UK.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's
That
horrifying to
makes
think how
me
pervasive that must be.
Very sad.
Yeah. But at the same time, there's a sinking part of, like, a sinking feeling in my stomach where I'm like, it does make a lot of sense that would be the case. And it's disgusting that it makes that much sense to me. But, you know, if you think about an industry that was so male oriented for so long and recently are we seeing, only recently are women starting to not be overly sexualized in that industry. That kind of and with the amount of testosterone and machismo that's circulating in it, it sucks to say, but it does make sense. The only thing to do is to, to open this discussion, which it seems like it's happening now because of this David Starr incident. So
Yeah.
I can only hope that there is some healing for everyone involved on the other side of this whole fandango.
Well, since you said heel, speaking of heel, you mentioned Ryan Nemeth. We did have Ryan Nemeth over a year ago on the show here doing an interview promoting his indie film project that he was putting together titled aptly Heel. And it was mostly the premise at the time from what we heard on the show. And you guys can go listen to this on our podcast feed.
We'll link to it below here. Yeah.
From about May of last year. But it's been shot and it's out now, I believe. So Ryan, if you hear this, correct us if I'm wrong. I've yet to be able to see it. I'm not sure where it's being distributed yet. But the premise of the whole thing was to dramatize and highlight the amount of addiction and sexual abuse that was happening in the industry of professional wrestling.
Yep.
And I think it felt like a crusade at the time that he was on to go on and do this, but with this sort of information starting to come out and the bombshell that you told me that there's 40 dudes on this list that are
so far
at the time of this recording, just in the UK alone.
Yeah.
So I want to go back and listen to what Ryan had to say. Maybe with all of this coming to light, I take it with a different context and a different respect.
Well, we certainly at the time we were shocked and definitely taken aback by him saying how pervasive it was. This just underlines his point. So definitely shout out to Ryan Nemeth for opening our eyes on that a year ago, and now we really see what he was talking about. Yeah. Moving over to WWE, Mr. Howell, Kevin Owens did not show up for the Raw tapings this week. I can't blame him. Last week, it was confirmed that someone who tested positive for COVID-19 was in the crowd, was ringside. Yep. And as a result, this week, WWE canceled its Tuesday tapings and spent all Tuesday testing everybody, giving them nose swabs. I don't know if they did the fast blood test, which is what they use in AEW to make sure that everyone is
antibody test.
Yeah, that's what they do use in AEW to make sure that everyone is safe there. They do that to everybody every time they film. WWE had not tested anybody other than taking temperature checks up until that point. So the first time everyone was tested was Tuesday, which is kind of crazy to think about. As a result, Kevin Owens did not attend the Raw tapings and went home. No word yet on whether or not he'll be back next week to attend the tapings, but as of right now, don't expect any KO coming up on Raw this coming week. So finally, Nick, on the show today, a couple of birthdays to mention. Sadly, these wrestlers have left us, but if they were alive, Bruiser Brody would have been 74 today, and Mitsuhara Misawa,
legend,
absolute legend, would have been 58 years old, passed away way too young for a guy of that talent. So rest in peace to both those guys. Happy birthday. And Nick, that is the news.
Man, what a downer today. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to BWO Daily. Thank you, Surrey and Dangerous, for all of the updates and the breakdown of what's happened and transpired so far surrounding David Starr and the indie scene and all of that stuff that's going on around it. Much more is likely to come, I feel, unfortunately, before we get out of this and before we are able to sort of put a bookend on this story. I feel like there's more to come, and we haven't heard the bombshells yet.
No, I think
that's what I'm mostly scared of.
Yeah, I feel like this is the tip of the iceberg, and as more people become more brave and are emboldened by some of these women coming out and telling their stories, I feel like there's more coming.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for checking out BWO Daily. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here and turn your notifications to all so you get notified every single time we put up a new episode every Monday through Friday. Also, we go live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern and every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern for our live show, our main podcast, where we break down Raw, AEW, NXT, SmackDown, and do recaps on Saturdays and Sundays for any pay-per-views. So make sure you subscribe to the channel here. Find links to our Discord community and other social media stuff down in the description below. But my name is Nick Howell. You can find me on Twitter at DataCenterDude.
And I am Sir Ian Dangerous. You can find me on Twitter at Sir Ian Dangerous.
And we will see you guys next time.